Hi, welcome to A Gray Barn Rising. I'm here, of course, with Bootsy Beagle, the best hound dog in the world. And I'm reading the poems this evening of the Spanish poet Blas de Otero. He lived from 1916 to 1979. He's exerted a profound influence on the poets both of his generation and the generations that have followed him. He's probably the preeminent post-Civil War poet in Spain, and he remained in Spain even during the time of Franco, although his poems were highly censored. And in fact, some of his poems only appeared in their original and full form in other places, such as in Cuba. What's remarkable to me about Blas de Otero's work is the way that it rejects high romanticism and uses colloquial diction and really moves into both political and social conscience in really profound ways. I love the way that his poems are always grounded in the particulars of his experience, the particulars of his neighborhood, of his country, and again, as I said, uses that colloquial diction. And surprising images, sometimes surreal, but often just surprising images that we would not expect. I'm going to be reading from the selected poems of Miguel Hernandez and Blas de Otero. The Miguel Hernandez portion is the first half of the book, and the Blas de Otero portion is the second half. Blas de Otero's poems are translated by Hardy St. Martin. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump in here and begin with a poem entitled Written in Rain. This is a quieter poem for him, and I think you'll see the variance between poems, between tone as I move through the poems. This is the time when you can begin to die. Take things easy after completing your 7th book. Now you can let your arms fall to your sides in the corridor of time and breathe deeply, pulling your eyelids shut. Think of nothing and forget the wrong you've done yourself. Matilda's back and the curve of her sex. Look now at the rain scattered among the days of November, the city lights and the money that falls in little crumbs on Saturdays at 6. Wait for the terrible awakening of Latin America and start to comb your hair, to go out, to keep on working for all those who say nothing, and keep on walking and protest and hold the light in their fist like a knife or peace like a gun. There's a very interesting directness in his language as well that I really admire. This next poem is entitled 7. And Blas de Otero has really interesting titles. I love the simplicity of the title of this poem, 7. And you'll see that will appear in the poem as well. My house, unfortunately, is a house, a sock hanging from a line. There I've written my saddest books and turned my face toward life, thank God. This house, my friend, this house is always sitting there. It just sits. And in summer it gets chilly and hot in winter. I suppose you believe that. And I have come back, comrade, for a few days to pick up my books, my records, my contracts, and I found my mother in the hall, and my sister in the living room, and myself reading in a corner. Friend, you have to understand, long days have gone by, and slow nights, comrade, since then. What can I do when I've seen the world from above, and even the clouds from above? And I walked once around a small boy in Pinar del Rio, and he was so different from Spanish children or the wise guys of Paris. Something has been going on in certain spots on this planet, friend. Unfortunately, comrade, my house is still the same. It's not the same. It contains more records, my friend, and more peace and quiet, comrade, and more love spoken in whispers. And it's 7 now. I love the closing of that poem, where it just takes this really common detail and mentions the time, and it's 7 now. I think it's just really marvelous. And it shows how his poems, in many ways, are trying to aim for both high ideals of social conscience, but that those high ideals are really communicated through what we would normally consider lower concerns, like mundane concerns, like mentioning the time. I just love that verticality in a Blas de Otero poem, that movement in his discourse. This is a favorite poem of mine that I first discovered. I first read this poem, I think it was 35 years ago, and it's called the 1937 Howitzer. This was the first Blas de Otero poem I ever came to. Some of his poems have little epigraphs that he has provided. Oftentimes we'll see a poem, there'll be an epigraph below the title in which the poet will quote another poet or a writer. But he provides these little almost subtitles or little epigraphs beneath the title of the poem that he has himself written. And the one here is, "The pencil with which I wrote that letter to the gods is worn down, dull, chewed up. The 1937 Howitzer." It has this incredible opening line, by the way. "The kitchen is the most surrealist thing in the house." I'm talking about kitchens with a coal range, of course. A yellow bulb lights up the Dostoevskian kitchen. Winter nights with rain, cold or wind or hail, and the squalid drops rolling down the whitewash. I have lived on the earth a long time, that is, on the discolored kitchen tiles. I've written many poems in the kitchen, and I almost, not quite, prayed in the kitchen. In the country, all the kitchens are happy to pick February as their month. My kitchen over on 36 Hurtado de Amazaga contributed strongly to the evolution of my thought. Today I think back on that kitchen as a holy place, a kind of Fatima with soot. When you sit on the wooden bench, a student lamp throws a melancholy light on the painted pine table. We have Espinosa's word for it. Brave Espinosa, great poet. And that Teresa, an interesting girl, she won herself a love-struck cameo of 8 lines that no bullfighter can leap over. Espinosa, socially conscious poet of kitchens and revolutions. Gutsy Espinosa, delicate half Veronica of Gustavo Adolfo Bécquer. My God, the dead are so alone. A dead man in the kitchen is a very serious thing. Wow, that poem just always blows me away. And in part, you see his surrealist, imaginative capacity emerge in that poem, and not only emerge, but then merge with his colloquial diction that I mentioned earlier. It's a remarkable poem. He has these great titles. Now here's another poem. I'll give you the little epigraph. He provides another one of his little epigraphs here. And that is, the consumer society is, of course, the one that consumes society. And this is called Either we're all going to be saved, or else let them sink. When your body is sore and dog-tired, and there's very little money or freedom or love or caramels, and you live in Madrid and can't decide to stay in Madrid for good or go to the Dardanelles, and you rhyme without trying to, and you remember that at one time I would never have come up with a rhyme as easy and flabby as this. When my body keeps on using my bones to beat me, then that's it. It's time to understand life and everything that suffering takes in. The life of Charles V, the life of Romeo and Juliet, the life of Karl Marx, the life of Sancho Panza, the life of Carlos Gardel, and the death of Che Guevara. Because to understand life in its infinite and identical variations, for example, the life of yours truly, knowing beyond a doubt that very few of you are likely to understand even my tiniest act, and that in turn maybe only one or two of you I've just mentioned will be worthy of receiving the fundamental act of my life. I mean, bearing in mind your tremendous egos and the helpless way in which I offer myself. Bringing up again the pain creeping down my back right now. I write as gratuitously as I did at 13, knowing who I am, understanding myself perfectly, seeing that I am as different from Charles V, Romeo and Juliet, and the other grandsons as wine is from water, and staying on in Madrid for something as simple as staying in Madrid, and because of the general need to quench my homesickness. And without any more effect than my presence, so useful and useless in my own part of the country, where I handed out a few pieces of living voice encrusted in 3 or 4 jarring books that really don't exist anymore. They were lived out all the way and worked out on foreign time. All of this forces me right now to air out my room a little and ask again for a caramel that doesn't mean anything. And some lines that will speak of the valley of my childhood, the mother of my adulthood, and the wife of my orphanhood. Saying, I answer for the tortures, not with my signature, but with my life. I support the faintest cloud over Orozco, my mother's tired walk, and that shattered smile southeast of here, putting into one single cry, justice, beaten with clubs, the mist's unsteady course, and the weightlessness of a mother's womb. Don't say Elvira lost her voice once her treasure was all spent. Let's be serious down to the end. Can you read my signature all right? Will I stay on in Madrid or give caramels away? Someplace else I may decide to live in, to vary, even to rhyme, repeating Tootsie Rolls, jelly beans, gumdrops, caramels, in easy and delicious endosyllabics? No. I can't stand Madrid. I prefer to smoke until I block up my bronchioles. The consumer society will never run over me. like that taxi in 1927 on a corner of Barquillo Street. I think the closing of that poem is so unexpected that it sort of runs right over the reader, like that taxi that he talks about. Such a powerful poem. Two of the 5 poets who Blas de Otero heralds as his favorite poets actually happen to be 2 of my favorite poets as well, but 2 of the 5 he mentions are Cesar, the Peruvian poet Cesar Vallejo, and the Turkish poet Nazim Hikmet. And I certainly hear comradeship from both of those poets, and influences from and conversations with both of those poets in that poem. Certain turns of phrase, certain tones. I want to close with this poem as another one of those epigraphs. Peace has been destroyed, and the sky is a pitiful tent. It has this wonderful title, Something Like A. I love that because it's so unexpected, and it's as if part of language is cut off. Part of the comparison, that desire that poets have to compare something, is sort of cut off mid-sentence in the title. Something like a. And what if instead of going to the theater this evening, I went off to Vietnam? Who is writing? Who is holding my hand? It is not mine. Nothing is mine, neither the mask nor the role. And what if this evening I went off to Vietnam? Some poor devil drinks a glass of water. He's not in his theater seat. He sits down. That makes 2 of us, the North and the puppets. Marais Pedro is the 3rd one's name, the pimp. And what if instead of being called Muerta Saga Minaga, I went off and they called me Union, Union, against the glass of water, thirst, free verse, and duty. On June 25th, we had no weapons. On July 26th, we had no weapons. Just a soldier and millions of projects and men, but we lacked arms. Missiles, in one word. Here I am sitting in the middle of the rubble of Hue, halfway into the Democratic Republic and halfway into the other same Democratic Republic. Sick. Standing in front of a stone at attention, terribly unworried about invaders, hearing the airplanes descending, climbing, ripping through the night like fabric, tearing at one jerk. What are you doing up there? Poor devils, come and see the performance. Sit behind the machine gun. Listen, you're all going to die. Don't shoot, because you're going to die any minute now. All of you. Shoot, 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 because you'll die anyhow. A tiny glimmer and the day, a specific day, Monday, February 18th, circles part of the sky. I'll soon be seeing your face, literally pounded to bits at the spot where the airplane flashed. Come on, shoot, 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 shoot. You only have one more man to go. Something like a line of poetry a dog sniffs at in the trash. Such a powerful poem. Again, one of the things that I think brings Blas de Otero's work together in powerful ways is that the more universal or broader concerns of social conscience and the political are connected to the personal for him, the particular and the wider. And so they feed one another, they accentuate one another, and both dimensions then begin to accrete, so that the personal is political and the political is personal. And that's a great feat for someone writing poems of such deep social conscience. I hope you seek out his work. Again, I read from the selected poems of Miguel Hernandez and Blas de Otero, and these were the translations of Hardy St. Martin. Thank you again for joining Bootsy and me for another episode of A Great